This explainer, we're going to shrink right down and journey into the fascinating microscopic world of the cell to look at the ultimate gatekeeper of life, the plasma membrane. This dynamic border is literally the foundation for how living things interact with their environment.
So I want you to imagine a cell not just as some tiny microscopic bubble, but as a highly secure, bustling metropolis. Now think about this for a second. How does a microscopic cell know exactly what to let in and what to lock out? Like, how does it allow essential nutrients to flow freely while simultaneously blocking lethal toxins? It doesn't have a brain, right? Yet it makes these life or death decisions every single second. Well, the answer lies entirely in the incredible architecture of the plasma membrane.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the cell's dynamic border, then dive into the history of membrane discovery, break down the composition of the membrane, explore the fluid mosaic model, and wrap it all up with functions and cellular transport.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the cell's dynamic border.
Okay, so the plasma membrane, which by the way is sometimes called the cell surface membrane or plasmalemma if we're talking plants, is far more than just a passive, static wall. It's actually a selectively permeable barrier. Basically, it acts as an intelligent checkpoint. Its whole job is to maintain homeostasis, which is that perfect internal balance required for survival, by regulating exactly what crosses its threshold. Small lipid-soluble molecules, they might slip right through, but larger or water-soluble substances, they are stopped dead in their tracks unless the cell explicitly grants them entry.
Moving on to part 2, let's look at the history of membrane discovery. We can actually trace a whole century of brilliant scientific deduction here. Back in 1885, Naegeli and Kramer first coined the term cell membrane. But the real game changer? That came in 1925 with Gorter and Grandal. And what's absolutely amazing is how they figured out the lipid bilayer. They used mammalian red blood cells, erythrocytes, because these cells don't have nuclei or internal membranes. It makes it super easy to isolate pure plasma membrane. By extracting the lipids and spreading them out, they realized the surface area was exactly twice that of the cells themselves. Boom. Proof that the membrane had to be a double layer. Then, in 1935, Danieli and Davson proposed their sandwich model. And finally, in 1972, Singer and Nicholson established the model we still use today.
This whole timeline brilliantly illustrates how science improves over time. Just contrast those last two models. The 1935 Daniela-Davson sandwich model envisioned this really rigid, solid structure. They thought the membrane was a completely locked-in protein-lipid-lipid-protein sandwich. But by 1972, Singer and Nicholson proved, no, it's not a solid sandwich at all. Instead, it's a fluid two-dimensional liquid where proteins and lipids are highly mobile. Science adapted to the new evidence, and it gave us the much more accurate fluid mosaic model.
All right, part 3. Let's break down the actual composition of the membrane.
If we look closely at the membrane's lipid composition, we see a super fascinating ratio. Now, proteins do make up about half the total weight of the membrane, but looking just at the lipid portion, phospholipids are the absolute foundational building blocks. They make up a massive 55%. We also have steroids, like cholesterol, at 20%, other lipids at another 20%, and glycolipids, which are the ones with those short carbohydrate chains attached, coming in at 5%. Now, to understand exactly why phospholipids are so foundational, we have to talk about one absolutely vital word: amphipathic. An amphipathic molecule basically has a dual personality. It has a polar hydrophilic, or water-loving, head, and a non-polar hydrophobic, or water-fearing, tail. Because the environment, both inside and outside the cell, is aqueous, watery, this dual personality forces the lipids to assemble in a very specific way. They act like molecular double agents, organizing themselves just to protect those hydrophobic tails from the water.
Which brings us to part 4, the fluid mosaic model.
You can clearly see how the amphipathic phospholipids mirror each other in this complex 3D structure. The water-loving polar heads face outward towards the extracellular fluid and inward towards the cytoplasm, while the water-fearing tails hide right in the middle. This creates a highly stable bilayer that's only about 5 nanometers thick. But remember, it is a two-dimensional liquid. These lipids are held together by weak van der Waals forces. That means the individual molecules can actually float freely and shift around laterally.
But wait, if it's so fluid, how does it keep from falling apart? Or, freezing solid when the temperature drops?
Well, that is exactly where cholesterol comes in. In animal cells, cholesterol acts as an essential temperature buffer. By embedding itself between the fatty acid chains of the phospholipids, it prevents the membrane from freezing solid in the cold while providing just enough structure so it doesn't get too loose when it's warm. Plant cells don't use cholesterol, by the way, but they use related compounds called sterols to do the exact same vital job. Now, as we embed proteins into our lipid bilayer, we start to see why Singer and Nicholson called it a mosaic. A mosaic is an artwork made of many different pieces, right? And here we have this diverse array of proteins just floating in a lipid sea. We have glycoproteins with little carbohydrate branches extending outward into the aqueous media to help the cell recognize other cells. And then we have massive proteins plunging right through the very center of the membrane. It's super important to separate these proteins into two distinct functional classes. First, the integral transmembrane proteins. As the name suggests, they span the entire width of the membrane. They're permanently locked in and create the physical pores, channels, or transporters that move molecules in and out. Conversely, we have peripheral proteins. These guys just sit loosely on the surface, either inside or outside the cell, and they do not plunge into the hydrophobic core. Instead, they provide mechanical support, often anchoring the cell's internal skeleton to the membrane to give the cell its physical shape.
Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, functions and cellular transport.
So the membrane is incredibly busy. Beyond just enclosure and mechanical protection, it facilitates regulated transport, which we'll look at in just a second. But it's also responsible for signal transduction, meaning it receives chemical signals like hormones or neurotransmitters from the outside and passes those messages inside. On top of that, it performs enzymatic catalysis, literally hosting vital metabolic reactions right at the lipid interface. It truly is a multitasking powerhouse.
Let's focus on that regulated transport for a moment, because this dictates the entire internal environment of the cell. Through a mix of passive diffusion and active transport, utilizing those transmembrane protein pumps we saw earlier, the membrane maintains perfect ionic balance. It ensures that essential nutrients are accumulated, waste products are kicked out, and harmful toxic substances are barred from entry. Without this exact, selective transport, cellular homeostasis would instantly collapse. And that brilliantly leads us to a final provocative thought. What actually happens to the human body when these tiny, dynamic border checkpoints fail? I mean, if a genetic mutation breaks just a single transport protein, or a virus manages to trick a surface receptor to gain entry, the resulting cellular chaos is the root cause of countless diseases. Understanding this membrane is the absolute first step in fields like pharmacology and medicine. I really hope this explainer gave you a crystal clear understanding of the plasma membrane, its history, its structure, and its function. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredible microscopic world, and as always, keep that curiosity alive.
Welcome to this episode.